Chapter 10, Engine Lubrication Systems. After studying this chapter, you'll be able to outline the function of the main components in a typical diesel engine lubrication circuit. List of properties of heavy-duty engine oils includes API CJ4, CK4, and FA4 category lube oils. Define the term hydrodynamic suspension and describe how this principle is used in typical diesel engines. Interpret terminology used to classify lubrication oil. Interpret API, American Petroleum Institute classifications, and SAE, Society of Automotive Engineers, viscosity grades. List some of the properties and ingredients of synthetic engine oils. Identify the components used in a diesel engine lubrication system. Replace and properly calibrate a lube oil dipstick. Describe two types of oil pumps commonly used in diesel engines and outline the operating principles of each. Measure and verify serviceability of an oil pump. Describe the operation of an oil pressure regulating valve. Then define the term positive filtration and outline the differences between full flow and bypass filters. Service a set of oil filters. Outline the role of oil cooler in lubrication circuit. Test an oil cooler core using vacuum or pressure testing. Identify the methods used to measure oil pressure in current diesel engines. Outline the procedure for taking an engine oil sample for analysis. Interpret the results of laboratory oil analysis. All medium and large bore diesel engines currently used in North American highways have a pressurized lubrication system to supply bearings and moving components with engine oil. Sump or oil pan. The sump or oil pan is a reservoir usually located at the base of the engine block and closing the crankcase. Oil pans are manufactured from cast aluminum, stamped mild steel, various plastics, and fibers. Oil pan acts as a reservoir used to collect lubrication oil, which gravity causes to drain into the crankcase, and from which the oil pump pickup can recycle it through the lubrication circuit. Dipstick is a band of hardened steel that is inserted into a round tube extended into the oil sump. It's described with indexes to indicate the oil sump level. When replacing a missing or defective dipstick, replace the engine oil and filters, installing an exact OEM specified quantity. Run the engine for a couple of minutes, shut it down, leave it for 10 minutes. Dip the oil sump with the new dipstick and scribe the high level graduation with an electric pencil, small engraver. Measure the distance from the high level to low level graduations on the old dipstick, then duplicate them on the replacement. Lubrication system components. We're going to go around the drawing. Here we have the washer, the cap screws. This engine is upside down, so you're seeing the pickup for the oil pump. There's some hardware holding the oil pump together, and it's a serviceable item. Here's the relief valve cap. The pickup assembly is located close to but not contacting the base of the oil pan, with enough clearance to ensure the minor impact damage does not inhibit the flow to the pump. External gear pumps consist of two mesh gears, one driving the other within a housing machined suction port and outlet charge port. As the gears rotate, the teeth entrap the engine oil and creates a flow where the two teeth mesh in the center of the seal is formed that prevents any backflow of oil to the inlet. Checking side clearance and checking end clearance on gears. These pumps generally last the life of the engine unless there's a problem. It's a rare occurrence that you check one. They generally are replaced. Lubrication system components, gear rotor, and internal pumps. Internal impeller with an external crescent vanes is rotated with an internal crescent gear, also known as a rotor ring. The rotor ring or impeller has one less lobe than the rotor ring. Result is that the inner rotor is driving the oil, and as one lobe engages any given moment of the operation, this way oil from the inlet port is picked up in crescent form between the two lobes, and as it rotates, it forces it out through the outlet, and lead lobe once again engages. The assembly is rotated within the gear rotor pump body. Lubrication system components. Pressure regulating valves are responsible for Defining the maximum system oil pressure. Most are adjustable. Typically, oil pressure regulating valve consists of a valve body with an inlet sealed and spring-loaded ball check valve. Other types of poppet valves are also used, but the principle is the same. Valve body is plumbed and parallel to the main oil pump discharge line. When oil pressure is sufficient to unseat the spring-loaded check ball, it unseals, permitting oil to pass through the valve and spill into the oil pump. This action causes pressure in the oil pump discharge line to drop. The regulating pressure valve is adjusted by setting the spring tension of the spring, usually with shims or adjusting screws. Oil coolers are heat exchangers consisting of a housing of coolant element or core through which oil is pumped, around which with coolant is pumped and oil is circulated. Oil temperatures in diesel engines run higher than coolant temperatures. Now I got to repeat that. Oil temperatures in diesel engines run higher than coolant temperatures, typically 230 degrees Fahrenheit. However, the engine coolant reaches its operating temperature more rapidly than oil and plays a role in heating the oil to operating temperature in cold weather startup and warm-up conditions. Okay, this is considered a bundle, and a bundle engine oil cooler is considered the most efficient. The consequence of failed cooler, bundle, or heated O-rings is oil charged to the cooling circuit. Most OEs prefer the bundle be leak tested by vacuum because this tests the assembly in the direction of the fluid flow in the event of a leak. Load to the OEM recommended vacuum valve, leave in the required amount of time to observe any drop-off. Alternatively, the bundle can be pressure tested using regulated shop air pressure and a bucket of water, and you would be looking for any bubbles. Lubrication system components. Piston oil cooling jets are a critical component in the engine lubrication circuit. They are plumbed into the cylinder block, lubrication gallery, and spray engine lube to the underside of each piston to manage piston temperatures. With Cummins engines, they're located inside the crankcase, and with PACCAR engines, the actual fitting is located on the outside, and only the tube goes through the crankcase and is aimed to the bottom of the piston. All of the engine monitoring devices used on an engine, oil pressure is one of the most critical. Loss of engine oil pressure will, in most cases, cause nearly immediate engine failure. Electrical sensors have engine oil pressure acts on a sending unit diaphragm, which in turn moves a sliding wiper across a variable resistor that incrementally grounds out a feed from the electric gauge. This gauge is a simple armature and coil assembly and receives feed from the vehicle ignition circuit. Friction, coefficient of friction is the measurement of aggressiveness of frictions between surfaces. Lubricants are designed to reduce friction between surfaces that are or could be in contact with each other, creating wear at contact points. Functions of lubrication system: lubrication, sealing, cooling, cleaning agent, and protection. Hydrodynamic suspension. Maintaining a liquid film between moving surfaces is achieved by pumping oil lubricant to a circuit. The result that the shaft journals float on a film of oil. Our crankshafts and our camshafts in particular depend upon the oil input, the oil leakage rate, and also the amount of clearance between the hardened journal and the bearing surface. Hydrodynamic suspension wedge depends upon the following four factors: load increase, temperature increase, lower viscosity oil, and changing shaft speed. The concept of hydrodynamic suspension is essentially the oil film and the velocity of the oil and the speed of the surface that is moving. Oil contamination, degradation, pay attention to this. Fuel can leak into coolant through rings. Rings can leak fuel from cylinder pressure and push fuel past the engine, past the piston rings into the engine crankcase. Coolant can leak in the cylinder head or through the liners and get into the crankcase oil. Oil aeration: when there's air introduced into the oil pump, we have bubbles form and oil pressure will drop and will lose its viscosity and its lubricity. Cold sludge: in cold weather operation, cold sludge will prevent oil from doing its full lubrication properties. Viscosity is oil's resistance to flow. The index is measured oils thin as temperatures increase. SAE, Society of Automotive Engineers, and viscosity grades specify the temperature window within the engine oil can function to provide adequate shear resistance. Viscosity is shear resistance. Multi-viscosity oils have different viscosities at different temperatures. Lubricity describes an oil's flow characteristic. Hotter oils flow more readily, colder flows less readily. Flash point is the temperature at which a flammable liquid gives off enough vapor to ignite momentarily. Pour point is the temperature at which a lubricant begins to gel or simply ceases to flow. So pour point, it's important to know when cold weather operations, zero viscosity oils are utilized in heavy trucks. CJ4 is formulated in 2007. Engines are equipped with EGR and diesel particulate filters. CK4 was introduced in model year 2017 for greater shear stability and also along with the fluid shear stability, better oxidation resistance. And FA4 was introduced in 2017, a lighter viscosity oil with lower friction operation. These are generally used in engines that do not use gear pump but use constant velocity oil pumps. Viscosity grades on the chart, obviously 0 to 30 and 0 to 40 are very popular in the colder climes. 5W-40 is a basic oil, and a typical fleet oil for most regions is 1540. The W stands for winter, not weight. So 15 is the winter weight, summer is 40. The W stands for winter. That's a test question. Synthetic oils. Most diesel engine OEMs approve synthetic lubricants and recommend them in severe duty, such as extreme cold weather operations. Full flow in series between the oil pump and the lube circuit. Bypass off a lube gallery in parallel. Long-term positive filtration is described a filter that operates by forcing all the fluid to be entered through the filtering medium. An example of this would be Volvo. Volvo still uses 3 filters. 2 of those filters are full flow, and the third filter is bypass. That is a sure way to make sure that your oil is filtered. Perhaps some consider that a little bit excessive or overkill, but Volvos very rarely fail in terms of oil filtration. Filtration methods: mechanical straining, absorbent filtration, and absorbent filtration. We see that twice. We're repeating ourselves. Full flow filters used on current trucks and bus diesel engines used between positive filtrations are rated to have particulate size between 25 and 60 microns. Bypass filters located on full flow filter mounting pads protect the engine should a filter become plugged. Bypass filters are used to complement full flow filters on current highway diesels. Tech tip: bypass filter boasts high filtering efficiencies, and failure to observe scheduled maintenance can result in plugged filters. Centrifugal filter or centrifugal canisters have the highest filtering efficiency. They consist of a canister with a cylindrical rotor that is supported on bearings charged with oil lubrication. Engine oil is forced through stationary cylindrical filtering medium, and filtering medium is rosin-coated paper element. When performing lube service on a truck that comes in off the road, expect the engine oil drained from the oil pan and filters to be hot. In fact, it is hot enough to cause serious burns. Take great care in dropping oil and filters from warm engines. Replacing a filter: filters are removed with a band strap or socket. In some cases where plastic housing are used, a specific OEM socket may be required to avoid damaging the filter assembly. And also the canister will tell you what the correct torque is for doing the install. You got to be careful that you understand the location of sealing and O-rings and flat rings that are utilized in a plastic filter assembly. And always check to make sure that the flange base has all of the O-rings off it. It is possible to double ring to install a filter where a ring has been stuck, an O-ring is stuck on the flange, and that would cause serious loss of oil and potential engine damage. Viscosity present of coolant, dirt contamination, abnormal wear contamination. Oil analysis is utilized by many fleets for every PM that is wet PM that is performed. So when they change the oil, they're taking an oil analysis to make sure that they are having a correct amount of byproducts are in the oil. Okay, the siphon method, the oil gallery pressure valve, and the oil plug drain method. There's several methods here of taking oil for the oil analysis sample. Whenever a high reading of oil analysis chart cannot be explained, contact the NSOP for the OEM before taking any action. Their experience and full feedback from across the continent may provide a simple explanation of the problem, avoid an unnecessary engine teardown. They see hundreds and thousands of engine oil analysis, and if there's a abnormality, they will know, and sometimes you'll have a byproduct or dissolved solids or a metal that's in the oil that's not a problem, and you have to seek a second opinion from the OEM. Viscosity is the liquid's fluid resistance to shear. Diesel engine oils recommend multi-grade oils over straight grades for many years now, and they improve the use of synthetic oils, especially for severe cold weather. The pour point of an engine oil is the temperature at which the oil starts to gel. Sludge oil is a result of oil degradation caused by prolonged low-load cold weather operation. Ash used in engine oils is mineral residue from oxidized and sulfated incineration, basically byproducts of combustion. High ash levels are indicated of high temperature operation, and oil aeration is caused by high oil pump levels, oil sump levels. If you have too much oil in the crankcase, you can have oil aeration. API classifications, EGR and DPFs require SAE CJ4. Post 2017 requires CK4 and FA4. FA4 is formulated for new gen fuel efficient engines and has limited or no backward compatibility. Most field research indicates synthetic oils substantially outperform traditional oils. Important to maintain correct oil levels. It should be checked. Most pre-trips required to be done checked daily. Positive displacement pumps on external gear and gear rotor pumps are used in oil pumps and diesel engines. Most are external gear pumps, and also there are many OEs are switching to constant velocity pumps, which make sure that you have the correct flow. You'll have lower pressure. They constantly have between 30 and 35 psi, but it's the flow, the constant flow, that is the objective with constant velocity pumps. When an engine's overhauled, oil pumps should be disassembled and checked. In most shops, they just replace it with new. Filters used on heavy-duty lubrication can be classified as full flow and bypass depending upon how they're plumbed into the circuit. Most OEs prefer filters to be primed before installation, and you check it and fill it from the inlet side only. Filters are usually rated by the mechanical straining specification in microns. Oil coolers or heat exchangers used on heavy-duty highway diesel engines, and the two types of oil cooler, bundle type and plate type. Bundle type is considered the most efficient. Bundle type cooler is essentially a bundle of rods. Most OEMs prefer a bundle element be vacuum tested. Plate type coolers have lower cooling efficiencies but offer fewer in-service maintenance problems. Oil pressure measurement in most engines are performed by a variable capacitance type of sensor that signals management computer. So a oil pressure sensor is typically a variable capacitance type 5-volt reference sensor that signals the management computer. Dash display or display, therefore computer input or computer output. Engine oil pressures usually have to fall to very low levels before electronic failure strategies are triggered. laboratory tests use engine oil samples is relatively inexpensive for tracking engine wear rates and providing early warning alerts on engine malfunctions, and they are adopted as part of regular wet PM schedule in all fleets, pretty much all fleets. Independents and owner-operators don't necessarily adapt the same practices as the larger fleets do. Spectrographic testing essentially shines a bright laser-type light through the oil, and it comes out with a band of light that determines what elements are in the oil. Routine engine samples are taken, they're sent into a lab, and you get an analysis back as to what the conditions are of the oil and what byproducts are in the oil. When interpreting oil samples, it should be noted that a high silicone reading is often indicating of a leak in the air cleaner or suction side of the air intake system. Essentially, silica or silicone is ground up sand, and dust from sand, that shows that you have a problem in the air cleaner or the suction side of the intake system. A vacuum leak in the intake manifold or even the EGR cooler could do that.